Welcome back to POSH America. I guess this is episode one of possibly version 3.0. I'm not really positive how to catalog everything at this point, but ultimately, last season, I did not record any POSH related content, and we had a poor season. Correlation? I don't think so. Actually, I think it has nothing to do with me. We just had an off year, but ultimately, don't want to take any chances just in case there is a link in the cosmic world in one shape, one way, shape, or form where if I put stuff out, Posh will do better, then great. Would love that. But we're on the precipice of a new season with the first game against Cardiff City away coming up. Big news, obviously, with the brand new identity slash logo coming out and a lot of other things. But what we're going to do today is go through a few things. First of all, the logo. Uh, and identity, while I was in no way, shape, or form overwhelmed with positivity about it, I also wasn't overwhelmed with negativity. I've been through, obviously, looking behind me, the original crest, which obviously is a city crest, and then you get to the second version of this thing. I wasn't particularly in love with the new logo. It didn't strike me as, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This change was 100% needed. But at the same time, I can see where they were coming from and trying to make the crest logo a little bit more adaptable to a variety of different things. So I see why it was done. I it's a weird analogy, but I was a huge Iron Man comic collector when I was a kid, and I used to read those comics religiously. And then when the movies came out, I was extremely excited. The second movie had like a 2 minute scene where Tony gets drunk and is inside the suit and kind of has like this breakdown and stuff like that. In the comics, it was a long time that he had like this struggle with alcohol where he wasn't in the suit and then he was, and he and Rhodey have this battle and everything like that. And it comes off in a 2 minute thing in a movie. I understand why you have to do stuff like that. You can't spend 2 hours of a movie or anything like that building out this arc that really doesn't move the story forward. The logo slash crest, it's a bigger thing. It's an emotional thing. People are, at least from what I've seen on Instagram and Facebook, are a little bit unhappy. I'll just put it that way. It's probably a little bit worse than that. But the one thing that I will say is kind of a litmus test that I have for whether or not a logo is truly great or not is, are people willing to tattoo it on their body? And I've thought long and hard about getting different things tattooed on my body over the years, and I've never gotten anything. Um, but at some point, there are people who are willing to put your logo onto their body permanently. And something like, Harley Davidson. There are tons of people who have Harley Davidson logos on their bodies because it means that much. American Airlines, not a lot of people probably have an American Airlines logo on their body because of the fact that the brand just doesn't mean anything. It doesn't hit at the heartstrings. So people having the club crest put onto their body, I think says something about, passion for the club, but also if the logo or crest is done well, it's also, a piece of art that people want displayed because it's a sense of pride. So the new logo, I've already seen two videos of people getting it tattooed on their bodies, and I think that's great. I think that it's an interesting play this early on, but ultimately, I think that means that this has at least the possibility of having some staying power. And the care that people truly have is for the club, not so much the crest. So at a certain point, it's going to get into the back of people's minds. It's not going to be that much of a an upset, and who knows? Maybe after the McAnthony reign is over sometime in the future, maybe they'll change back or go back to the original crest or something. I'm not really sure, or go something a little bit more traditional. We'll see what ends up happening, but ultimately, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. It's going to grow on me, I'm sure, throughout the time because it's just going to become kind of an association. But for right now, it's I understand it and I'm not emotionally involved with it yet. Right now, it's up here, it's not in here, and that is is not problematic, but it doesn't reek of a ton of confidence as well. Second piece that we have is as I was watching the uh, preseason friendlies, there's a few things that I was thinking about, and one of them was an old um, coaching discussion that I used to have with players when I was talking to them about like playing time and things like that. I said that there were the two C's that I was always looking for is number one, confidence. Am I confident that you're able to do that thing that I need you to do, regardless of the position? You know, if it's a goalkeeper, am I confident that you can make the save or distribute the ball well or whatever? And then the second C is consistency. How consistent can you be with that thing? So if the person is okay, I have a 9 out of 10 with my confidence in them. They have all the abilities. I believe that they can do that thing at a pretty high level, but then the consistency, how often do I get that 9 out of 10 versus are they, a five on consistency where they're not producing that highest level. Their level goes down relatively quickly, either due to fatigue, lack of lack of concentration, those types of things. So putting those two numbers together gives you a relatively cumulative score that that person who's got a 9 as their top level, but they're five on consistency, that 45 number isn't all that impressive. So what you end up with is a player who has a pretty high ceiling, but they're going to let you down more often than not, or it's going to be a bit of a crapshoot on what you're going to get out of them. So those types of players who are five on consistency, they become, role players and things like that. So I thought it might be interesting to take that with a few key players. Obviously my opinions on players and what we should be doing and everything like that. I usually try and stay pretty optimistic and positive, despite the fact that I have been called turgid before. Um, I have opinions about what is going on, but over the past year, there was a Facebook group that I decided to like not be a member anymore because of the fact that uh, the overwhelming number of posts just they were so negative to the point where it's like I don't even understand why people are fans of a club that they seem to find everything to nitpick about with regards to players, management, and ownership and everything like that. So I thought it might be interesting to do a few of these double C evaluations, but keep it with people that, you know, I at least have a good sense of. And the first two are going to be ones that aren't even players. Well, actually, maybe even three. So, first one, we're going to go with confidence and consistency on our owner, Darren McAnthony. Okay. First one, confidence. Okay, where's my confidence in his ability to do his job at the level that he needs to do it? and I'm going to put it at a nine. He's very good at doing what he can do within the constraints that we have. Okay, we are not a Man City or anybody else that has that level of capital to work with. But as a League One owner of we'll call us a mid-sized club, he does a relatively good job of the things that he's supposed to be doing, recruitment, and you know those types of things that he's keeping us well within our means while trying to move us forward. So I'm going to put him in as a nine as my confidence in his ability, and then consistency nine as well. I'm going to say that he most of the time is showing up in the way that he should be showing up. He's showing that level of commitment and ability on a regular basis. The only reason he's probably not a 10, and this is not, you know, he's a human being like everybody else, is I think he does have a tendency to sometimes get a little bit ahead of himself, where he sometimes, thinks he's a little bit smarter about certain things than he is. I think, bringing in the other owners at one point was a good sounding board. They might not have been the right ones, but I think that he really could use a checks and balances system in order to, keep him more consistent, and and firing at all cylinders because of the fact that um, he would be able to, concentrate on things that he's really good at and also have that back and forth. And then the second one would be Darren Ferguson. All right, our manager. Where am I on confidence and consistency with him? I'm going to go again with a nine on confidence. I am a Ferguson guy. I've always believed in his ability to come up with a strategy and get players prepared in a way that is going to um, reap results. He's not a 10 out of 10. He's not guaranteed promotion. But if you look at his track record, especially with Posh, but also with Doncaster, he's almost always in the playoffs and or getting promoted. He's right on the cusp of that at all times. He's not perfection by any stretch of the imagination. Um, I think that one of the holes that he has in his armor, to a certain extent, is that he has a tendency to be less willing to change when it's needed. And it's one of those things where it's tough to tell when you're supposed to change things up versus stick with the program. It's not always obvious, especially sitting in the manager's seat, when you're supposed to change things up, and I'm talking slightly about substitutions, but also slightly about, formations and things like that. So, uh, sticking to his guns a little bit too long at times is probably about the only thing that I would take off of um, his confidence scale. And then consistency, I would put him in at a 9.5. He's consistently able to get good things out of players that, a lot of other people just weren't able to get that level of performance out of. The only time where he seems to struggle and why he gets a 9.5 instead of a 10 is when players think that they're above what it is that he's putting out there. I think that to a certain extent, it's a derivation. It comes from being his father's son. His father was the top of the top. It's, Manchester United during their prime. And when he's telling players that they have to do a certain thing, there's no other place to go, that's higher at that particular time. So he is the expert that you kind of have to listen to. And I think that Darren absolutely has all of that ability to get the best out of a player. But if a player decides inside of his own head that, you know what, this is just a stepping stone, I just want to move on to the next thing. And it's a consistent thing that we've seen throughout his career is, whether it's Preston North End or, specific players looking for that next paycheck or whatever, that they've already looked past what he's trying to get them to do. And the unfortunate thing is most of the time, if they're doing what he's asking of them, the team is going to have success, and that's going to get that player that next move and help out their career just that much more. So, although it's a relatively high score, that's about all I can say in the negative about his particular um, consistency mark. He's consistent over the years that he's been able to get positive things out of players over and over again. So, um, the next place that I'm going to go is kind of a little bit of a curveball, but that's quite all right. The next one with regards to the Posh season in my confidence versus consistency. I'm not even going to tell you what it is just yet, but I'm going to give you my numbers and then we'll see whether or not anybody gets where I'm going with this. But the next one is I have a 10 in confidence. All right. 10 in confidence. At times, this person is the ultimate in being able to do their job at the highest level, 100%, and, you know, perform at a level that, you know, basically you would expect from somebody higher up in the hierarchy. All right. But the second one is consistency of a one. All right. Consistency of one. Although top level is available, it's not always going to show up. It's actually going to show up infrequently. And the thing is that we just need to, as a fan base, and especially as players, and this is one of my real complaints about posh players over the years, is referees. Okay. Referees, there I have seen as I've watched games where there are some referees that are at that highest level where, they are getting everything right. They're managing the game correctly and everything. And we're still complaining about calls. And the thing is that there's also that other level of, some of the referees are absolutely atrocious and they do such a horrible job and they're missing things and it seems almost like they're biased and everything. And the ultimate message behind that is that we just need to forget about them. Like I almost never get more frustrated with posh players than when they are going down before they even get touched and expecting the referee to fall for it. I think we just need to get over the fact that referees are never going to help us win games. No, I say never, but the Sammy Schmaddock's foul at Lincoln, we all know, or a foul against Lincoln. We all know that referees do influence games, but I think we need to put that to the back of our minds and not let it affect how things are run throughout the game, because we've seen it on both sides and get too focused on it ultimately. For something that's that volatile, I don't think it's worth the time and the mental energy to actually bring it into your game plan. Use it as little as you possibly can. All right. So I'm going to give you two players here, and then I'm going to move on uh, for the season. So first, I'm going to go to the captain just because of the fact that out of all of the players, I think that a large portion of the responsibility for the season comes down on his shoulders. So I think that Sam Hughes was a great signing. I think that when we brought him in on loan, he righted the ship. He's the right attitude. I love the fact that his relationship with his brother and having a young child and all of that stuff, like it ticks all the boxes for what you're wanting from a leader. So although he's not perfect, I'm putting him at an 8.5. He can do almost all of the things that you need a center back to do. I think that he needs to work on his ball handling skills. He's not Ronnie Edwards dribbling the ball out from the back the way that he used to. He's a different kind of center back. So there are some holes in his game that, he can still work on for sure. He's not as strong as anybody would like him to be in that particular area, but winning head balls, leading the back line, organizing, absolutely great. So I'm giving him an 8.5 out of that. And so far, from what I've seen of him in the matches from last year, and then heading into preseason, I'm putting him at a 9 for consistency. I think he gets to that same 8.5 level just about every single time that he steps out onto the field. So, it's not perfection. Again, that scale of getting uh, from the two numbers. So, 8.5 and the 9. Okay. 9 times 8, 72, plus the other half, 76 and a half. Okay. We would think, um, oh, what you want to be is 100. We're never going to have anybody who is 100. Even players that were some of our best ever. You take a Ronnie Edwards type of player who was probably a 9.5 out of like all the skills that he needed in order to be a number one defender. And then consistency, that guy was right up there, probably a 9.5 again. There were very few games other than in the January transfer window where he kind of seemed to get his head thinking about his next move just a little bit too much. But 9.5, 9.5 is for a League One player. Obviously, he's moved on to a different thing, and that would change up how I was rating the whole entire situation. But ultimately, nobody's perfect. We're not getting a 10 out of 10 on either of those scales for anybody. So Sam Hughes looking at a 76.5, really solid, but obviously can improve, and I think he will. And then the second player that I'm going to go with is Kean Hayes. Kean Hayes by far is my um, player that I think is going to have the biggest increase this year, impact uh, in what we end up doing. I don't want to say that our entire season is hinging on that particular player, but I think that our season is going to go as he goes. Um, I'm putting his abilities at a 9. I think that especially when I've seen him in this preseason, but also last season, whenever he's got the ball at his feet, you feel like good things are about to happen. That the ball is going to end up in a good spot for us. But the thing is he's probably at the moment about a 6 for consistency. He does great things and then all of the sudden, you know, breaks down, tries to beat one person more than he probably should. Um, so really strong capabilities, but that consistency factor of is he doing the right thing at the right time? Now it's a little bit of a difficult system to, 100% say, oh, well, he's an offensive player. He's supposed to take risks, and those risks aren't always going to work out. Absolutely, 100%. But I feel like there's a difference between, it not working out because of the fact that the defender made a great play, and there's also the way that it didn't work out because of the fact that he didn't play the way that he could have. And that's why that's what I'm basing my 6 on. So if you take a look at that, again, you're talking about a 54, which is not the most complimentary, but at the same time, I think what we're going to see is kind of a second year Kwame Paku from Keane Hayes this year. Is the first year that we had Kwame, his play was kind of that same thing. It was questionable whether or not he was going to pop as a player. He was not really as consistent as anybody would have liked. He was okay, but ultimately turned into the player that we eventually saw in the end. And I think that Kean Hayes is probably by the end of the season going to be at that 8, 9 in consistency where we know exactly what we're going to get out of him every single game. And it's going to be something that we can rely on regularly. So those are my two players that I'm I'm putting in evaluations on at the moment. Um, Ultimately, can't wait for the season. Looking forward to it. I think that despite all the negativity about the logo slash identity, and also that we haven't signed this player or that player, or we didn't, we still need a striker. Like my belief in Darren and Dara is still off the charts because of the fact that, and I'll put this more on Darren than Dara, is one of the things that we seem to forget as fans is that these players, even though I'm putting numbers on them, you know, and the Kean Hayes is the perfect example of when he has a crap game, we're going to slate him as, he's not good enough or something along those lines. But especially with these young guys that we have in the squad, is they are going to grow as the season goes on. And probably the best example from the last few years would have been Katongo when he was playing right back. People were saying, oh, well, in the first 2 weeks where he was playing with Kwame Paku in front of him and Peter Kioso had been so revolutionary in helping Poku just be able to do whatever it is that he wanted to do in front, and PK had the back kind of covered. Then when Katongo took over, it was like he's not a right back. He can't do this. He can't do that. And it took 2, 3 weeks to get there, but eventually he turned into a right back that wasn't quite as good as Kyoso, but he did fill that role well, and it made us a relatively complete team at that particular time. And I think that that's the type of stuff that we're going to see out of this group. The beginning of the season is going to be difficult. And then eventually it's going to turn into a better situation as the year goes on, as these players learn their roles, gain their confidence, apply their trade just at the same level for a few months, and you're going to see improved results over and over again. Darren Ferguson is really good at getting the best out of players that a lot of other people might have written off. And I think that that's what we're going to see again. Last year, based on, the morale that was going throughout the camp, I think that everybody else, not everybody, a large number of players had their eyes on something else other than winning games. And now you've got a group of players who, are on long-term contracts, and figuring out how to get that next move is linked to getting results on the field. Those two ideas are actually pulling kind of like a suspension bridge. They seem kind of opposite, but when you pull them, that's actually what brings up the middle and gets the results that we're looking for. Anyway, this is the first episode of this season of Posh America. Up the Posh, and I hope you guys have a great day.